Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraet. Nashta Prayesho Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, Verse 22. Stalyagnitāpāt payasobhitapas tattapatastandulagarbharandihi dehendriyasvāshaya sannikarshat tatsamsrithi purushasyanurodhat. King Rahugana continued, my dear sir, you have said that designations like bodily fatness and thinness are not characteristics of the soul. That is incorrect. Rahugana is saying that is incorrect. Because designations like pain and pleasure are certainly felt by the soul, certainly felt by the soul. See, this is what people do. So they don't know anything, they will speak like they know everything. You may put a pot of milk and rice within fire and the milk and rice are automatically heated one after the other. Similarly, due to bodily pains and pleasures, the senses, mind and soul are affected. So it's decided, senses, mind and soul are affected. Soul cannot be completely detached from this conditioning. So argument put forward by Maharaja Rahugana is correct from the practical point of view, but it arises from an attachment to the bodily conception. It can be said that a person sitting in his car is certainly different from his car, but if there is damage to the car, the owner of the car being overly attached to the car feels pain. Actually, the damage done to the car has nothing to do with the car's proprietor, but because the proprietor has identified himself with the interest of the car, he feels pleasure and pain connected with it. So we've discussed this multiple times. This conditional state can be avoided if attachment is withdrawn. Then the proprietor would not feel pleasure or pain if the car is damaged or whatever. Similarly, soul has nothing to do with the body and the senses. Please note this. Again, we should write this down. I have nothing to do with my body and senses. But due to ignorance, he identifies himself with the body and he feels pleasure and pain due to bodily pleasure and pain. So I have nothing to do with this body and senses. I have nothing to do with this body and senses. I have nothing to do with this body and senses. Due to ignorance, I am identifying with the body. Due to ignorance, I am identifying with the body. Due to ignorance, I am identifying with the body. I have nothing to do with body and senses. You want to write this down somewhere? If you can just keep meditating on this all the time. Because when we are chanting, we are chanting. When we are not chanting, we are in bodily conception. This is our problem. Either we can be chanting all the time, or if we are not chanting, at least we should try to remember this. That I have nothing to do with body and senses. I have nothing to do with body and senses. Very important. शास्ताभिगोप्ता नृपतिः प्रजानां यः किङ्करो वै न पिनष्टि पिष्टम् स्वधर्ममाराधनम् अच्युतस्य यदीह मानो विजहत्यघौघम्. My dear sir, you have said that the relationship between the king and the subject or between the master and the servant are not eternal. But although such relations are temporary, when a person takes the position of a king, his duty is to rule the citizens and punish those who are disobedient to the laws, which is correct. By punishing them, he teaches the citizens to obey the laws of the state. Again, you have said that punishing a person who is deaf and dumb is like chewing the chewed or grinding the pulp. That is to say, there is no benefit in it. However, if one is engaged in his own occupational duty as ordered by the Supreme Lord, his sinful activities are certainly diminished. Therefore, if one is engaged in his occupational duty by force, he benefits because he can vanquish all his sinful activities in that way. This argument offered by Maharaj Rahugana is certainly very effective. In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami says, Tasmat kenapi upayena mana Krishne niveshayet. Ata kenapi upayena mana Krishne niveshayet. Somehow or other, kenapi upayena mana Krishne niveshayet. You engage uh, mind in Krishna. Actually, every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna, but due to forgetfulness, a living being engages himself as an eternal servant of Maya. As long as one is engaged in Maya's service, he cannot be happy. And looks like everybody wants to be engaged in Maya. Our Krishna conscious movement aims at engaging people in Krishna's service. So devotees also should try to engage in Krishna's service, not in Maya's service. That will help them become freed from all material contamination and sinful activity. Vitaraga Bhayakrodha. By becoming detached from material activities, we'll be freed from fear and anger. By becoming detached from material activities, we'll be freed from fear and anger. Okay, just 1 second. I'm going to pause.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. By becoming detached from material activities, we'll be freed from fear and anger. See, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. We have to become detached. Not we don't have to stop material activities if required. It is not that we have to continue material activities also, but if required, we can do material activities but remain detached. Then we'll be freed from fear and anger. By austerity, one becomes purified and eligible to return home back to Godhead. So austerity is required. So this is detachment from material activities is itself a big austerity. And by that austerity, one becomes purified. Because now we are contaminated because of this false ego, thinking that everything belongs to us. So we become purified of this contaminated consciousness. The duty of the king is to rule the citizens in such a way that they can become Krishna conscious. This would be very, very beneficial for everyone. Unfortunately, king or president engages people in sense gratification instead of the Lord's service, and such activities are certainly not beneficial for anyone. King Rahugana tried to engage Jadabharata in carrying the palanquin, which is a form of sense gratification for the king. However, if one is engaged as a palanquin carrier in Lord's service, that is certainly beneficial. In this godless civilization, if a president engages people somehow or other in devotional service or the awakening of Krishna consciousness, he renders the very best service to the citizens. Of course, so the reason why one is engaged in some service is also important. Um, so Prabhupada is here is saying it's a kind of sense gratification for the king. But generally, so we have to understand that some of these things will have to be done as a matter of duty, but as ordained in the Shastra. So that is why this prescribed duty. So it cannot be whimsical. So the king here is talking about his prescribed duty, but he cannot be whimsical about uh, carrying out his occupational duty. It has to be as per Shastra. So, which means he needs to be guided by Brahmana to know what is right, what is wrong, what should be his mood, all those things. But here, Maharaja Ravugana is just taking very high level functional view of things and just saying, okay, so since I'm doing my function, I'm okay. I need to do this. But it's a very high level view. Vedas actually describe to very great detail, right? How, what are the qualities that Kshatriya should have, what are the qualities Brahmana should have, etc. So it can't be just, one perspective or, uh, yeah. So yeah, holistically we have to understand how one has to live in Varnashrama society. तन्मे भवान् नरदेव भिन्नां नरदेवाभिमान मदेन तुच्छीकृतः सत्तमस्य कृषिष्ट मैत्री दृशमार्तबन्धो यथा तरे सद् अवध्यानम् अह अम अमह. Whatever you have spoken appears to be to me to be contradictory, O best friend of the distressed. I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing the body of a king. So that is agreeing. For this, I have certainly become an offender because I spoke to you insultingly. That he is agreeing, but he is not able to understand what needs to be done. So he's surrendering to him. Therefore, I pray that you kindly glance at me with your causeless mercy. If you do so, I can be relieved from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. One is pardon me and also give me instruction because I'm like confused. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that by offending a Vaishnava, one finishes all his spiritual activities. Offending a Vaishnava is considered the mad elephant offense. Mad elephant can destroy an entire garden. Okay. One may attain the topmost platform of devotional service, but somehow or other, if he offends a Vaishnava, the whole structure collapses. Unconsciously, King Rahugana offended Jadabharata, but due to his good sense, he asked to be excused. So, if we do something like this, we have to beg for forgiveness. This is the process by which one can be relieved from a Vaishnava aparadh. Krishna is always very simple and by nature merciful. When one commits an offense at the feet of a Vaishnava, one must immediately apologize to such a personality so that his spiritual advancement may not be hampered. So he's first begging, saying that please glance upon me with your causeless mercy because I've insulted you. न न विक् न विक्रिया विश्वसुहृत्सखस्य साम्येन भीताभिमतेस्तवापि महद्विमानात् स्वकृताद् धिमाद्रिन् नाङ्क्षति अदूराद् अपि शूलपाणिः. O my dear Lord, you are the friend of the Supreme Person of Godhead, who is the friend of all living entities. You are therefore equal to everyone, and you are free from bodily conception. Although I committed an offense by insulting you, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. You were fixed in your determination, but I have committed an offense. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay due to my offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. So he was very intelligent and conscious of the inauspicious effects arising from insulting a Vaishnava. So he was very anxious to be excused by Jadabharat. Following in the footsteps of Maharaja Rohugana, everyone should be very cautious not to commit an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. So Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat says, शूलपाणि सम यदि भक्त निंदा करे भागवत प्रमाण तथापि शीघ्र मरे येन वैष्णवेरे निंदे सर्वज्ञ है से जनेर अधः पात सर्व शास्त्रे कई. Even if one is as strong as Lord Shiva, who carries a trident in his hand, one will nonetheless fall down from his spiritual position if he tries to insult a Vaishnava. वैष्णवेर निंद करिबेक यार गणा तार रक्षा सामर्थ्य नाही का कोना जना शूलपाणि सम यदि वैष्णवेर निंदे तथापि यह नाश याया कहे शास्त्र वृंदे यह न मानिया ये सुजन निंदा करे जन्मे जन्मे से पापिष्ट दैव दोषे मरे. What is the result of one who blasphemes a Vaishnava? He cannot be protected by anyone. Even if a person is as strong as Lord Shiva, if he blasphemes a Vaishnava, is sure to be destroyed. The verdict of all Shastras. If one does not care for the verdict of the Shastras and dares blaspheme a Vaishnava, he suffers life after life because of this. Okay, this ends the fifth canto, 10 chapters. Now Jada Bharata instructs Rahugana because Rahugana is asking, saying that you please instruct me, I'm confused. 511.1. Brahmana Uvacha Akovidak Kovidabvadavadan Vadasyato Nati Vidam Varishtaha Nasurayo hi Vyavaharam Enam Tatvava Marshena Sahama Nanti. Brahmana Jada said, my dear king, although you are not at all experienced, you are trying to speak like a very experienced man. Ashochan Anvasochastum Pragnavadam Shabashase. It's like Krishna told Arjuna. You're speaking like a learned man, but you're lamenting for something that should not be lamented about, or a learned man doesn't lament about. Consequently, you cannot be considered an experienced person. An experienced person does not speak the way you are speaking about the relationship between a master and a servant or about material pains and pleasures. These are simply external activities. Any advanced experienced man considering the absolute truth does not talk in this way. Krishna similarly chastised Arjuna. Similarly, among people in general, 99% try to talk like experienced advisors, but they're actually devoid of spiritual knowledge and are therefore like inexperienced children speaking nonsense. Consequently, their words cannot be given any importance. One has to learn from Krishna or his devotee. If one speaks on the basis of this experience, one's words are valuable, meaning on spiritual knowledge. At the present moment, the entire world is full of foolish people. Bhagavad Gita describes the people as Muda. They're trying to rule human society, but because they are devoid of spiritual knowledge, the entire world is in a chaotic condition. To be released from these miserable conditions, one has to become Krishna conscious and take lessons from an exalted personality like Jadabharata, Lord Krishna and Kapila Dev. That is the only way to solve problems of material life. तथैव राजन् उरुगार्हमेध वीतान विद्योर्विजृम्भितेषु न वेदवादेषु हि तत्त्ववादः प्रायेण शुद्धोऽनुचकास्ति साधुः. My dear king talks of the relationship between master and servant, king and the subject, and so forth, are simply talks about material activities. People interested in material activities which are expounded in the Vedas are intent on performing material sacrifices and placing faith in their material activities. For such people, spiritual advancement definitely not manifest. Vedavada, Tattvavada. According to Bhagavad Gita, those who are simply attached to Vedavada, Rathapartha, Nanyadastiti Vadinaha. Vedavada Ratha. The men of small knowledge which are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. For them, this they're only worried about this elevation to heavenly planets, resulting in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification in opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. So they're karma kandis. So they want to perform sacrifice according to Vedic injunctions to achieve higher planets system. So the practice chaturmasya, one who performs chaturmasya yagna becomes pious. By being pious, one may be promoted to the higher planetary systems. So some are attached to karma kanda, then others they are not attached to this purpose. Or even in this life, do pious activities, Janmaishwarya Sutoshri Vir, or go to heavenly planets. But all this eventually will be finished. Kshine Punyamartya Lokam Vishanti. So the performance of pious activity is not the real objective. Vedas sarve rame vedya. The objective of Vedas is to understand Krishna. So those who are Vedavadis, they are not actually advanced in knowledge. And those who are followers of Gnana Kanda are also not perfect. So there's Karma Kanda, Gnana Kanda. However, when one comes to the platform of Upasana and accepts the worship of the Supreme Person of Godhead, he becomes perfect. Upasana also not just there's Upasana of other demigods also. So one who comes to the platform of Upasana of the Supreme Lord, he becomes perfect. In Veda, the worship of different demigods and performance of sacrifice are certainly mentioned, but such worship is inferior because the worshippers do not know the ultimate goal is Vishnu. Ante vidu swarthagatimi Vishnu. When one comes to the platform of Vishnu Aradhanam or Bhakti Yoga, one has attained the perfection of life. Otherwise, one is not Tattvavadi, but a Vedavadi, blind follower of Vedic injunctions. The Vedavadi cannot be purified from material contamination unless he becomes a Tattvavadi. That is one who knows Tattva, Advaya Tattva, Parama Tattva. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. Even after coming to the platform of understanding Tattva, one must worship Bhagavan, Vishnu, and his expansions, or one is not yet perfect. Bhavanam Janmanam Ante Gnanavan Mam Prapadyate. Conclusion is that unintelligent men with a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand Bhagavan, Param Brahman, or Paramatma. But after studying the Vedas and attaining the understanding of the absolute truth, Supreme Person of Godhead, one is supposed to be on the platform of perfect knowledge. So one who studies the Vedas, actually they have to understand. Vedasha sarve ahameva vedyaha. They have to understand Krishna. Otherwise, it's useless. So he's saying you're just talking like learned, but you're not learned. Those who actually understand, who are spiritually advanced, they don't talk like this. And those who are engaged in karma kanda, they don't experience spiritual advancement. तस्य तत्त्वग्रहणाय साक्षाद् वैयसीरपि वाचसमासं स्वप्ने निरुक्त्याग्रहमेधि सौख्यं न यस्य हेयानुमितं स्वयं स्यात्. A dream becomes automatically known to a person as false and immaterial, and similarly, one eventually realizes that material happiness in this life or the next on this planet or higher planet is insignificant. Very nice example. Dream becomes automatically known to a person as false and immaterial. When he wakes up. Similarly, one eventually realizes that depends on each person will take different amount of time to eventually realize that material happiness is worthless. So this is our progress. This is our journey. When one realizes this, the Vedas, although an excellent source, are insufficient to bring about direct knowledge of the truth. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advised Arjuna to become transcendental to the material activities impelled by three modes of material nature: Traigunya, Visha, Veda, Nistraigunya, Bhava, Arjuna. The purpose of Vedic study is to transcend the activities of the three modes. Of course, in the modes, mode of goodness is accepted as the best, and one can be promoted to higher planetary systems by being in Sattva Guna. However, that is not perfection. One must come to the conclusion that even Sattva Guna is also not good. One may dream that he has become a king with a good family, wife, and children, but immediately at the end of the dream, he comes to the conclusion that it is false. Similarly, all kinds of material happiness are undesirable for a person who wants spiritual salvation. If a person does not come to the conclusion that he has nothing to do with any kind of material happiness, he cannot come to the platform of understanding the absolute truth, Tattva Gnana. So I'm reading this again. If a person does not come to the conclusion that he has nothing to do with any kind of material happiness, nothing to do, he cannot come to the platform of understanding the absolute truth. Karmis, Gnanis, Yogis are after some material elevation. Karmis work hard day and night for some bodily comfort. Gnanis simply speculate about how to get out of the entanglement of karma and merge into Brahman. Yogis are very addicted to the acquisition of material perfection, yoga, siddhi. All of them are trying to be materially perfect. But a devotee very easily comes to the platform of nirguna in devotional service. That is Traigunya Vishya Veda, Nistraigunya. And consequently, the results of karma, gnana, and yoga become very insignificant. Therefore, only the devotee is on the platform of Tattva Gnana, not the others. Of course, the Gnani's position is better than that of Karmi, but that position is also insufficient. Gnani must actually become liberated, and after liberation, he may be situated in devotional service. Bonam Janmanamante. यावन्मनोरजसा पुरुषस्य तत्त्वेन वा तमसा वानुरुद्धं चेतोभिराकूतिभिरातनोति निरङ्कुशम् कुशलं चेतरं वा. As long as the mind of the living entity is contaminated by the three modes, his mind is exactly like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. Mind is contaminated by the three modes. It simply expands its jurisdiction of pious and impious activities by using the senses. The result is that the living entity remains in the material world to enjoy and suffer pleasures and pains due to material activity. So the reason is mind is contaminated by the three modes. Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that material pious and impious activities are both opposed to the principle of devotional service. Devotional service means mukti, freedom from material entanglement. But pious and impious activities result in entanglement within the material world. If the mind is captivated by the pious and impious activities mentioned in the Vedas, one remains eternally in darkness. One cannot attain the absolute platform. To change the consciousness from ignorance to passion or from passion to ignorance does not really solve the problem. One must come to the transcendental platform, otherwise, life's mission is never fulfilled. वासनात्मा विषयोपरक्तो गुणप्रवाहो विकृतः षोडशात्मा बिभृत्पृथन् नामभि रूपभेदम् अन्तर्बहिष्त्वं च पुरैस्तनोति. Because the mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities, it is naturally subjected to the transformations of lust and anger. So, in this way, it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. In other words, the mind is conducted by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are 11 senses and 5 material elements, and out of these 16 items, the mind is the chief. Therefore, the mind brings about birth in different types of bodies. When the mind is situated in a higher or lower position, it accepts a higher or lower material body. Mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities. Then it is naturally subjected to lust and anger. And then it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. Of course, the root cause is actually false ego. Mind is just working for the false ego. Transmigration among the 84 lakh species is due to minds being polluted. Due to the mind, the soul is subjected to pious and impious activities. Again, because this is because of the false ego. Mayara vashe yacha bheshe kacha habu dubu bai. The spirit soul is completely under the control of Maya and you're being carried away by its waves. Material existence means being fully controlled by material nature. Mind is the center for accepting the dictations of material nature. This way, living entity is carried away in different types of bodies continuously. Krishna Bhuli say Jeev Anadi Bahirmukha Atayeva Maya Tare Deya Samsara Dukha. Why is Maya giving us Samsara Dukha? Because Krishna Bhuli Anadi Bahirmukha, he's become Bahirmukha. He's turned his face away from Krishna, forgotten Krishna. So Maya gives Samsara Dukha. Anyway, so the important part here is that we should not be absorbed in material, good or bad, pious or impious activities. And this attraction for pious or impious activities of this material world is just because of false ego, thinking that I am the body, without knowing that I am the soul and I have nothing to do with the pious and impious activities of this world, and that I have to transcend all these three modes. Pious and impious is just in the three modes. No, obviously, so one thing needs to be clarified here. This is true for those who are always engaged in devotion. They don't have to worry about good and bad of this world. Meaning they don't have to worry about, oh, okay, I'm doing punya or I'm doing papa. As long as it is serving, it is giving pleasure to Krishna. And we should not speculate about whether something is giving pleasure to Krishna. That should be dictated by higher authorities, guru, etc. So then we are saved. We don't have to worry. But those who are not all the time engaged in devotional service, of course, they have to be worried about being stuck by engaging, being absorbed in pious and impious activities. And the solution is not that okay, I will not do impious activities, I will do pious activities. No. Solution is how do I transcend? How do I finally come to the state of mm, overcoming the modes? And that is what we should strive for. Not that we strive for some piety. Mm, that's not devotion. That's just accumulating punya and maybe getting some better material outcome. That's all. Dukkham sukham व्यतिरिक्तं च तीव्रं कालोपपन्नं फलम् आव्यनक्ति आलिङ्ग्यमाया रचितान्तरात्मा स्वदेहिनं संसृति चक्रकूटः. The materialistic mind covering the living entity soul carries it to different species of life. This is called continued material existence. Due to the mind, the living entity suffers or enjoys material distress and happiness. Being thus illusion, the mind further ceases, creates pious and impious activities and their karma, and thus the soul becomes conditioned. Hmm. Soul is becoming conditioned by these pious and impious activities because of the false ego and the mind. Mental activities under the influence of material nature cause happiness and distress within the material world. Being covered by illusion, the living entity eternally continues conditional life under different designations. Such living entities are known as Nitya Baddha, eternally conditioned. On the whole, the mind is the cause of conditioned life. So, yoga is Indriya Samyama, control the mind and senses. The mind is controlled, the senses are automatically controlled. Therefore, the soul is saved. If the mind is engaged at the lotus feet of Krishna, Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo, senses are automatically engaged in the service of Krishna. When the mind and senses are engaged in devotional service, living entity naturally becomes Krishna consciousness. But the important part is to actually engage mind and senses, not just senses. Meaning, mechanically, if we are engaging in devotional service, that will not help much. We have to start with mana. As soon as one always thinks of Krishna, he becomes a perfect yogi. Yoginam api sarvesham bhaktatena antaratmana. This antaratmana, the mind is conditioned by material nature. Uh, so the mind being most powerful covers the living entity and puts him the waves of material existence. So we have to engage the mind. That is the reason why reading Shastra is a very powerful process because it engages the mind. Reading philosophy, not able to understand philosophy, breaking our head over and trying to understand philosophy. This is good because it engages the mind. That is why those who are more attracted or develop taste for Shastra, they will find it more easier to control the mind than those who are not attracted to Shastra but attracted to some service which is connected to the gross body. So Shastra, reading Shastra is service connected to the subtle body. Connected to the subtle body meaning we are doing it with mind because we have to hear, we have to focus, right? And also chanting. So these things are including the subtle mind, subtle body, mind, and Shastra is including intelligence. So these are important because the mind has to be engaged. Of course, somebody who's engaging in some activity of the connected to the gross body, say for example, making garlands, but who are actually completely absorbed, mind absorbed, they'll also achieve the same result. But unfortunately, when we are engaging with in activities concerned with the gross body, our mind disconnects unless we are very attracted by that service. So it's very important that anyway, the whole point is that somehow mind has to be engaged, mind has to be absorbed. तावन्नयं व्यवहार साधवीः क्षेत्रज्ञोक्ताक्ष्यो भवति स्थूलसूक्ष्मः तस्मान्मनोलिङ्गमदो वदन्ति गुणागुण Unatvasya Paravarasya. The mind makes the living entity within this material world wander through different species of life, and thus the living entity experiences mundane affairs in different forms as a human being, demigod, fat person, skinny person, and so forth. Learned scholars say that the bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation are caused by the mind. Just as the mind is the cause of bondage, it can also be the cause of liberation. Manmana bhavamad bhakto. Mind is described here as paravara. Para means transcendental, avara means material. When the mind is engaged in the Lord's service, it is called para. When the mind is engaged in material sense gratification, it is called avara. At the present moment in our conditioned state, our mind is fully absorbed in material sense gratification, but it can be purified and brought to its original Krishna consciousness by the process of devotional service. Mind must be controlled in Krishna consciousness, like example of Ambarish Maharaj. Tongue can be utilized to spread the message of Krishna and glorify the Lord or take prasada. Devan mukhehi jivado. When one utilizes the tongue in the service of the Lord, the other senses can become purified. So if we don't engage the tongue in the service of the Lord, it becomes very difficult. Meaning we are eating non-prasadam, we are talking useless things, then it becomes very difficult. As stated in the Narada Pancharatara, Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Rutvate. When the mind and senses are purified, one's total existence is purified and one's designations are also purified. One no longer considers himself a human being, a dog, demigod, cat, dog, Hindu, Muslim, so forth. When the senses and mind are purified and one is fully engaged in Krishna service, one can be liberated and return back home, back to God. So mind has to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness and become purified. That's the whole point. So it's important mm, to introspect where our mind is. Where is our mind's absorption? So how do we know where is our mind's absorption? Where is our mind absorbed? How can we find out? Any thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
When hankering for Krishna reduces, Krishna
No.
services.
Okay. What are the things that our mind is absorbed? How do we know that?
Pranam Prabhuji. Prabhuji, whatever comes while chanting.
Yeah. Perfect. Whatever comes while chanting. Whatever thoughts come to us while chanting, that is where our mind is absorbed. Today, actually, I was observing, mind has become so habituated to just my mind, just to plan things, even though there may or may not be attachment. I'm just attached to planning. And Prabhupada actually says somewhere saying that no amount of planning is going to give pleasure, is going to satisfy the soul. So even material things, for example, okay, I need to do something. Not that I'm attached to that activity, but I'm just attached to planning. Now, this is also bondage, right? So it's there's gross attachment, there's subtle attachment, there's all kinds of attachments. But all this we can find out when it'll appear, it'll surface, when we are chanting mostly. And then we can make a note, oh, I'm attached to this thing, I'm attached to that thing. And how much of that is Krishna will show us how much we are actually attached to Krishna or we are attached to material things. Right? So mind. And we have to introspect actually. The point is that we have to think about these things. Not that we mechanically just go on doing devotion. It's not going to help. Mechanical devotion is not going to help. Manmana bhava mad bhakto. Mind has to be engaged, absorbed. Yeah, Shashank Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
Prabhu, but if mind is thinking on spiritual platform, like whatever
Sorry.
the thoughts which it comes, if whatever thoughts which comes to mind, if it is spiritual, is
Hmm.
that is also considered as attachment?
Yeah, which is good attachment. Which is good attachment. It is auspicious to have spiritual thoughts come into our mind while chanting, but that's not still it's progress, it's advancement, right? But still, the focus target should be to just yeah. Anyway, I mean, this is good. It will by this we will make progress, and eventually we will just come to the stage of, see, today our absorption might be just again little bit more mechanical, meaning in the sense, okay, I need to do this service, or I have to do that, I have to do this. Now uh, we should come to the platform where the uh, mind is naturally Krishna's rupa, guna, leela, all these should manifest naturally. That is where we have to go, and eventually when we are in that state, absorption increases, and then we will go towards perfection. But first is material absorption in material activities, then absorption in maybe external spiritual activities, but then finally coming to just doing whatever we are supposed to be doing with chanting, which is to Shravanam, just here without anything. Just attachment. So much of love should be there for the name that nothing else actually comes to our mind. Then other things will get revealed. See, thinking about my spiritual activities is also still activity of the mind, because we are still in contaminated state, not fully pure. Yeah, Sumantra Mataji and then Lalita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Regarding the question is put up, like while chanting, you have thoughts going on. Sometimes wantingly, sometimes something out of the grave comes out. You've done something knowingly, unknowingly, and you're repenting for it. What like like you don't even realize. I mean, while growing up, you must have done something. Then why that when it is dead and buried? And why does it flash? Otherwise, it doesn't flash. And one more question I wanted to ask, Prabhuji. King Raghugan is a king, so he represents the Lord. I mean, this thought keeps going on to my head many a times. And when Jad Bharata is carrying the palanquin, I mean, he doesn't know that he's an exalted devotee. In our life also, Prabhu, like when the helpers don't do work properly, we chastise them. If they don't come on time, like many times I tell my husband, Prabhu, ये लोग काम ठीक से नहीं करते, हम लोगों को कितना गुस्सा आता है. कृष्णा कभी गुस्सा नहीं करता ना हम लोगों पे. हम भी तो उनके नौकर हैं, फिर भी हम लोग ठीक से काम नहीं करते, प्रेम से काम नहीं करते. I mean, but then he's a king and he's got all right to chastise Jad Bharat. I mean, just because afterwards it's relieved that he's so exalted, King Raghugan asks sorry, and he's regretting what he's done. But we do this all the time, no, Prabhu. How do we know the person in front is an exalted soul? He may be in any shape, any form.
Very nice question. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
what
So
explanation is
yeah.
this to this?
So the first one is those thoughts come to our mind, which are not is like deep down somewhere, subconscious mind. I mean, somewhere deep, hidden down somewhere, just pops up. So which just me shows how deeply conditioned we are, how deeply these things are there in our mind, and how important it is that all of these should come out. And sometimes these would be just some, what should I say? Not harmful. Not harmful meaning something is there, it just came out, and we just didn't bother about it. As in, it's okay, it just came and it went. That's fine. That's not an issue. Because we can't control everything that is there in the mind. What we should try to control is not reacting to these thoughts that come, right? Because these things have to go. This is the purification process, right? And when these thoughts come, we should not delve too much on them. If they are not important, there's something of the past, something, just ignore, because mind is a repository of thoughts of like millions of all of our lifetimes, right? Previous lifetimes. So there can be something popping up every now and then, right? Which we can't relate to or can't give any reason to, but we should just not give it too much importance if it's not important. And definitely during chanting, nothing is important, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, yeah, this is a very important thing. So two things to be considered. One is a general quality that all human beings have to develop. Forget about devotees. All human beings have to develop is to develop respect for other jivas. And definitely devotees have to have to develop respect for other jivas. Now, which is why I was saying that it's not just that's sufficient for Rahugana to think that okay, he's the king, so he has the right to chastise. That's all. That's all the platform that Rahugana is talking on, right? He's just saying, okay, I'm the king, so I have the right to chastise you because you're doing something wrong. No, that's why I was saying that Shastra actually gives a very elaborate, discussion about how one has to behave. That is why the culture aspect of Vedic culture is very, very important. Unfortunately, today we are thinking, saying that, it's just enough if I'm chanting Hare Krishna. And it's not required whether, it's not important whether I'm like cultured in the way I'm dealing with people, or whether whatever I'm doing is right or wrong. Of course, it is most important, right? And Vaishnava culture is based on Vedic culture. That is the reason why Prabhupada was very, unhappy about not having established Varnashrama, because Varnashrama means Vedic culture. Vedic culture will give you basics of human culture, not Vaishnava culture, human culture. So we have to know all this to be able to actually is right or wrong based on our Varna Ashrama, etc. Right? Now, that is for Rahugana, right? For all of us, it's very simple that if we are devotees, we have to actually behave like devotees. And one of the most important things is that we don't do Jiva Himsa. See, like we remember, no, this incident where one snake becomes a devotee by mercy of Narada Muni, and then others are troubling throwing stones, etc. Then the snake comes and asks Narada Muni, "What should I do?" Narada Muni just says, "You just hiss. That's all. Don't do anything more." Means that sometimes just to correct somebody, we might hiss, but that hiss should not go to our heart. We should not take it very, very personally. Meaning we should not get absorbed in that. We should just see things around us very objectively, and then we can just use whatever way we think is correct. For example, suppose say okay, you're talking about your some maid servant at home, etc., not serving properly. Yeah, and like you rightly pointed out, Krishna doesn't is never upset with us. That's one. But of course we don't have to worry about that. As in, yeah, if somebody does some mistake, first thing is we can tell them in the proper way, right? Like, in a very cool, composed way, meaning saying that this is what it is, this is how what is expected, this is not what it is, this is not how it should be done. And yeah, if it works, then it's good, but mostly it doesn't work because most people are not, yeah, they don't have themselves in under their minds under control, etc., to accept whatever we are saying, which means that it gets repeated. When it gets repeated, we might have to tell it differently so that the impact is made, but without us getting impacted by it. That's the important thing. That's why I said the intention is very, very important. And also, like sometimes, so many times, we hear devotees saying Prabhupada used to become very upset when things are not done on time or not done the right way, etc. But his chastisement would, and that mood would just last for just for the duration of his speech. Meaning, whatever he's saying, as his words are angry, he's furious. As soon as his words end, his fury is gone, his anger is gone. I mean, it just appears like nothing has happened. Nothing happened at all. That is what is expected out of devotees. And that will take us sadhana, willing desire first to actually come to that platform. If we think we are entitled to chastise this person, you know, I own this person, or I'm giving salary to this person, so I have the, yeah, I own that person, or I have the authority to chastise. These kind of thought processes is what will lead us to a wrong action. So we have to understand, okay, we have not bought anybody by giving them salary. We are giving them salaries because they're doing some work. So we are giving them salaries. So we don't own them. So we have to figure out ways to actually deal with them in a more Vaishnava way. Of course, if somebody is Asura, Ravana, Hanuman burnt Lanka, right? So uh, it's not that we just in the name of humility just let somebody destroy Krishna's property or misuse or whatever, right? But There are everything has to, we have to judge everything very properly, right? So which means we should have understanding of Shastra. Then based on that we can, I see sometimes, very small things. I see people getting agitated, irritated, even devotees, very small things. So we have to be clear. It's not good. Both are not good. Getting too much agitated with every small thing, irrespective of how important or how serious it is also not good. Not getting worked up at all or not paying required attention to these things is also not important. Is also not good. Right? So meaning something not good is happening. Somebody is unclean or not keeping place clean, etc. It's not that we'll just ignore it. If it is connected to Krishna, we are supposed to do the right things. So but yeah, we have to have control over ourselves. Only when we don't have control over ourselves, only we will get angry, and maybe talk very rudely, very harsh. If required, it can be done, but then how do we know if we are on the right platform? Immediate next moment our feelings should become like the waves of like ocean. Just becomes just stabilize, meaning no bad feelings in the heart. That is ideal Vaishnava behavior, and it will take us sadhana. Of course, when we speak things like this, it's not that we are on that platform, but by sadhana we'll get there. But we should at least know where to get. What is our goal? What should we achieve? What situation, what position we should achieve in terms of our behavior? Sarvair gunes tatra samasate suraha. One who is a devotee, all good qualities reside in him. That's the whole thing. Yeah, Lalita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
That you told about Chaturmasya is not important, or we have
No,
to.
I
It is
didn't
a must
say.
for a
Prabhupada is
devotee.
saying. No, Prabhupada is saying that Chaturmasya is actually done by people mostly to accumulate punya.
Okay.
Of course, devotees do Chaturmasya. Devotees should do everything just for the pleasure of the Lord.
Okay.
And Chaturmasya also is an austerity that helps us to give up attachment to some kinds of food, etc.
Yes.
So it's good, it's beneficial for devotees to do
We
Chaturmasya.
can, but we can do. It's
Yeah,
not that we should not do.
yeah,
We
we
have
can,
must.
we should do.
It is a must or not.
No, it's not. Nothing is a must, right?
Okay.
But it is good to do because it's an austerity. Generally,
Okay.
we don't do austerity, right? So it's a
Yes.
good austerity to practice. But
Okay.
none of this should be done on an extreme basis such that bhakti is affected. For example, somebody started doing Chaturmasya, then they're not presentable. They don't, like shave themselves. They don't want to go and give classes, or they don't eat enough, so they become so weak that they can't do any services. All this is not the mood. The mood is service cannot get affected. In addition, you want to put yourself through some austerity, yeah, please. It's always welcome. That should be the mood. Everything is being done just for the pleasure of Krishna, not to show off. Somebody saying that, see, in these 4 months I don't know. Just intentions have to be very clear. It's just for the pleasure of
The
Krishna.
pleasure of Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Shall we close? Okay. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyo cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhu.